Spending so long of dying of hypothermia. Hypothermia, by the way, not hyperthermia. There's two different things. I figured that while I was in the nether, I may as well get some more magma blocks and magma shards to turn into, you guessed it, more heating coils. Upon returning from my vacation to the nether, I decided it was time to make some automatic turrets. The biggest challenge with that was that I did not have any circuits. I had not made any circuit boards yet. And circuit board making is not easy because you need some fancy machines. You need a fancy assembler to make the electronic parts, and you need to make etching acid to etch the circuit board to begin with. The etching acid takes several steps to make. You first have to make brine in a mixer from salt and water. Then you stick the brine in an electrolyzer, and you get hydrogen and chlorine from the brine. And then you take the chlorine, and you mix it with pulverized iron, pretty sure. And that's how you get the etching acid. So it's a multi-step process that requires several different machines. I started by making the electrolyzer and trying to set up some of the other stuff, but of course we have an invasion, so that's always cool. After fighting off the invasion, I continued trying to make the mixers that I need, because I need 2 mixers to do it most efficiently. I got a bunch of salt from my kitchen, which I can just produce infinite of, and I started making brine in my mixer. After getting a bunch of brine, I threw it in the electrolyzer and began to produce chlorine and then the hydrogen gas as a byproduct. I set up my second mixer and threw in my chlorine and some pulverized iron into it to make etching acid. The first thing I did with my etching acid was dump it on the ground and stand in it to see if it would hurt me, which it did. 10 points to Gryffindor for realism. In the middle of the night, I went up to the roof of my factory building and decided to break it to let all of the pollution out because I was concerned that trying to filter it inside the factory would just cause a gigantic explosion instead. I didn't really feel like filling in a giant crater. After lighting it out, I had a huge cloud of pollution in my sky. It was really weird. All throughout the next day, I noticed that I wasn't regenerating any health despite eating somewhat regularly and also having full hunger and saturation. I was trying to figure out what the problem might be, but I got a little bit distracted at the tragic death of everyone's favorite merchandisable bowling ball. The next day I built some of the second floor of my factory building before deciding to run into a high voltage power line to see if that might help me regenerate health. Well, first off, it didn't, as you might expect, but I was hoping that after I was all done with that, I might start to regen health again normally, which I did for a brief time, and so I just did some building, but then the problem came back, and as you can see here, I'm not regenerating health. I even tried sitting in my spring water, my hot spring water, and it didn't regenerate either. It was all very strange, so I was just trying not to die, because I figured it was probably some weird mod compatibility thing, but I didn't want to relaunch the game quite yet. I made a pollution pump, some pollution pipes, and some filters, so that I could begin taking that giant cloud of pollution out of the sky, the one that I let out of my factory roof. I got that all set up, and filtering the carbon. I don't really care about the sulfur, there's not very much of it, and you really have to have a ton of sulfur for it to become a problem, so most of the time I don't even filter it. I kept filling in the windows in my new factory building, but I was running out of my bricks, because the bricks are actually made with dirt to make them stained, and for some reason I was running out of dirt. I know that might be hard to believe, but yes, I had to go purposefully mine dirt just as a building material. Having to do parkour to place every single window made it relatively slow going, but little by little I finished the exterior of my new factory building. Late one evening when I was on the brink of death, I finally decided to relaunch my game and figure out what was causing my health to not regenerate. And I solved it. It was a weird config thing with the new mod that I'd added, but now it was all fixed and I was able to go merrily on my way. On day 32, I used up the rest of the bricks that I had all ready for building, and the rest of the day I just spent casting rail segments. The next day I checked on the big pollution cloud that I was filtering and I saw that half of it was gone, so I moved the filter over to where the rest of the cloud was so that I could keep getting rid of it. I spent a bunch of time and a bunch of resources making the blocks for several multi-block machines, specifically the precision assembler for